Activision, kiss my ass. Put your lips to my ass and kiss it. French kiss it. I mean, first, Spider-Man 3 on the Wii has less than half the content of the other versions of the game. The Wii version of Transformers 2 was a weak beat-em-up instead of a neat third-person shooter. The Dark of the Moon Wii game is a 3-hour-long driving game with shit controls. War for Cybertron was butchered on the Wii, and Fall of Cybertron didn't get a Wii port of any kind. Deadpool is getting released on every console except for the Wii and Wii U, and now you've screwed us on The Amazing Spider-Man? Am I going to have to research every single one of your products that I consider buying in the future to make sure you don't screw me again? Rather than porting the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 game to the Wii, Beanox developed a version of The Amazing Spider-Man for the 3DS and then ported the handheld game to the Wii. Activision did the same thing with Transformers Dark of the Moon, which Beanox had nothing to do with. We caught you red-handed, Activision, you sons of bitches! Stop screwing over Nintendo! And yeah, I know that the Wii U version is a port of the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 game with all of the DLC minigames included, but I'm not going to pay $60 for the correct version of the game. You're not getting my money a second time! And yes, I did end up owning this game instead of renting it because I had a birthday recently and I didn't feel up to telling my parents that their 20-plus-year-old son who is about to graduate from college wants an action figure for his birthday. Okay, in all fairness, I understand that there isn't a whole lot of difference between the two versions of the game. They both have the same story and exact same scripts and recorded dialogue. They have the same combat and same central mechanics. There's really only one major difference between the two versions, and I'll talk about it in a minute. I will say right off the bat that I like this game. I had a genuinely good time playing The Amazing Spider-Man. Having said that, this game has issues. It has lots of issues. The game picks up a few months after the movie. After the Lizard's rampage, Oscorp decided to continue Connor's research and make more cross-species specimens. Yeah, let's pretend that makes sense. Make more creatures like the one who tried to take over the city. Oscorp hires a new scientist named Alistair Smythe because of his work with robots, and Smythe, being the only intelligent person at Evil Corp, decides to kill all of the cross-species specimens. However, Gwen Stacy gets weirded out by Smythe and his army of killer robots, and she takes Spider-Man to check out the cross-species as they're being disposed of. When the specimens sense that Spider-Man is a cross-species, they go berserk and break out and start terrorizing the city. So yeah, it's kind of hard to ignore the fact that the city is in mortal danger, and it's all Spider-Man's fault. Anyway, these new cross-species have the ability to infect other people, and pretty soon New York is flooded with cross-species zombies. For poorly explained reasons, the antidote that worked in the movie doesn't work anymore, so Smythe decides to suppress the cross-species threat by sending his armies of robots to go out and mass murder them, while Spider-Man breaks the Lizard out of prison to work on a new antidote. The story of the game is fairly compelling. You're racing to stop the infection before it spreads, you have to stop Smythe's robots before they begin mass killing innocent people, you're stopping chaos and panic from spreading through the city, and there's intrigue around not knowing if you can trust the Lizard and wondering if Smythe has his own hidden agenda. The story of the game is like the story of the movie. It's compelling, but it has a lot of problems. There are 4 cross-species villains in the game: Iguana, Vermin, Scorpion, and Rhino. And yes, I know that the game has absolutely nothing in common with Rhino or Scorpion from the comics. None of these villains have any significant part in the story. You just have out-of-nowhere boss fights with them one at a time while you run around sorting out the killer robot problem. Also, how is it that combining a human's DNA with an animal's gives these new cross-species the ability to generate mass quantities of acid? Because unless you're combining human DNA with a xenomorph, that makes no sense! How come when normal citizens get infected by the cross-species, they immediately turn into mindless zombies, but when Gwen gets bitten by a cross-species, it's well over half the game and several days later, and she still hasn't turned? Actually, they explain that in the first level, getting bitten will either turn you into a zombie or it will kill you, and that makes no sense. Black Cat appears in exactly one level where she robs a bank with an army of mercenaries, which is about as far from the comic book version of Black Cat as you can possibly get, and she's never mentioned again. The game has a side quest where you take photos of Oscorp conspiracy evidence for an investigative reporter, and even if you complete the side quest, you never learn anything about any kind of conspiracy. I'm not going to sit here and discuss every single plot hole because nobody will watch this video if it's an hour long, but the game's story is full of self-contradictions, underexplained plot points, and plot threads that go absolutely nowhere. Hell, here's how brilliant the game's writing is. When Dr. Connors makes an antidote, you have a level where you break into Oscorp to save Gwen. The antidote doesn't work. Connors creates a new one because Spider-Man's DNA has Deus Ex Machina genes in it. I'm not joking about that. And the next level is you breaking into Oscorp to save Gwen again. Even the character bios don't make sense. Take Rhino, for example. At the start of the game, you're told that the Rhino is a rhinoceros with some human DNA spliced into him. Because only losers experiment on rats or monkeys, everyone knows that if you want to get real science done, you experiment on rhinos. But if you take a photograph of the rhino and unlock his character bio, you get his real backstory. Connor's boss, the Indian guy from the movie, learned enough about Connor's research to perfect the serum on his own, and, because he has connections with the Mafia, took some low-level bruiser, gave him a healthy dose of rhino DNA, and planned to sell him to the Mafia as a super-powered enforcer. But he was killed by the lizard. Yes, he was supposed to have been killed in that scene on the bridge in the movie, I honestly couldn't tell, and the other scientists of Oscorp made up the rhino with DNA hybrid story as a cover. Where do I even start? Even if, by the power cosmic, Connor's boss perfected the formula after having glanced a few times at Connor's flawed and incomplete notes, the entire reason why Indian guy threatens Connors in the movie is because Norman Osborn is deathly ill and needs the formula or he's going to die. Why the hell didn't Indian guy take the formula, tell Oscorp, screw Connors, I have perfected the formula, and give Norman Osborn the formula that his life depends on and become world famous? Why was creating a super soldier for the Mafia his first idea for what to do with the formula? It would have been more plausible if they said the rhino was Kamen Rider Thrust. I'd buy that. That would have been awesome. Also, one last plot point that I absolutely need to bitch about. Towards the end of the game, Smythe injects Spider-Man with a nanobot serum that begins to eat Spider-Man from inside, takes away his powers, and starts killing him. Eventually, Gwen calls Spider-Man and tells him, I've got an idea. Maybe if you electrocute yourself, it'll kill all of the nanobots and give you your powers back. I'm serious. That's her plan. Have Spider-Man pump hideously lethal amounts of electricity through his body and hope this electricity short-circuits all of the nanobots and somehow reverses the massive amount of damage the nanobots have already done to him on a molecular level, thus restoring his powers and putting him back in perfect health. Is this just how Gwen breaks up with her boyfriends, casually suggest to them that they commit suicide? And of course it works! Okay, enough talking about the game's story, let's talk about the gameplay. This is where the Wii game and the other game differ. In the normal version of the game, you get between levels and kill time between levels by swinging around a huge open world. In the Wii version, you go to an apartment in between levels and select missions by clicking icons on a map. PlayStation and Xbox versions get a huge open world full of stuff to do and explore. Wii version gets a board with some postcards on it. Yeah, starting to see why I'm cheesed off about this game. Everything else about the game, near as I can tell, is the same, but the Wii game doesn't get an open world to play in. Oh, I guess the Wii just isn't advanced enough to handle a giant open world environment. Oh wait! Spider-Man 3 and Web of Shadows both had those! There is no excuse for this! To try and make up for not having an open world with extra activities, the game has several combat, timed, survival, and stealth challenges that you can do between missions. The challenges are a nice distraction and it takes about an hour or so to complete them all, but none of the challenges are actually challenging. I finished every time challenge with over half my time left and every stealth challenge only getting spotted once. The gameplay is pretty simple. You run through the stage until you run into a group of enemies and you either beat up all of the enemies or sneak around and take each enemy down using stealth. In combat, you press the B button to strike enemies, and when Spider-Man's spider sense goes off, you shake the Wii remote to counter the attack. The combat is directly stolen, very similar to Batman Arkham Asylum, but the game has a few more similarities than that. Spider-Man regularly uses a portable phone to talk to Gwen the same way Batman chats with Oracle. The game has audio evidence tapes, which are just like the patient interview tapes. The game has the same XP and upgrade system as Arkham Asylum. There's even a level where you rescue doctors from escaped patients in an asylum. In the Arkham games, doing well at combat and getting lots of XPs revolves around getting and maintaining a high combo, which requires timing to pull off critical strikes, carefully countering attacks, strategizing around special enemies and when to use special attacks and gadgets, and aiming Batman to take out enemies in a strategic order. Combat has a rhythm to it, and the combat revolves around dispatching enemies without breaking that rhythm. In this game, I just mash the B button and swing the rear remote when asked to dodge attacks, and that's it. The enemies die really quickly, the enemy groups are nowhere near as large as the ones in Arkham Asylum, and even though there are a few special enemies, they're all vulnerable to basic attacks, so the only time you need to shake up this strategy is when you need to web strike a cheap bastard with a gun. The combat isn't bad, it's just vastly inferior in every conceivable way to the game that it's blatantly ripping off. The combat also has a lot of glitches. If you have a combo going, you can use a signature move to instantly take down an enemy. Sometimes using a signature move drops your combo to 0, and sometimes it doesn't. The button that uses signature moves is also used to fire web shots, so most of the time when I try to use a signature move, Spider-Man fires webs instead, and this is a huge problem when mutated enemies cannot be taken down unless you use a signature move. Sometimes enemies that are supposed to be part of a group just zone out and don't join the fight. Dude, You just not feel like fighting today? I'll punch you in the head anyway. Sometimes the end fight bonuses for combos and signature moves are given to you before a fight is over, but what really drives me nuts about the combat, Spider-Man says the exact same things 80 freaking times per fight! He just chanted all 4 of his mid-fight quips at once. What shitty coding! He just says those 4 lines over and over and over again. Also, if you need to find a switch or do something special to proceed further into a level, Spider-Man will repeat one line of dialogue over and over and over again. In the last level of the game, you have to turn 4 wheels to drain some water from a tank, and I got so tired of hearing Spider-Man bitch about how I needed to hurry up that I muted my TV until I found the last wheel.
Stepping into that.
Peter, where are you? I'm starting to lose it down here.
Time's
Shut up.
water is his element, huh?
Shut up.
Better reach Gwen, and fast.
Shut the hell up! The game's combat isn't bad, aside from Spider-Man never shutting his pie hole. You have extremely little health, so it does require skill and some timing if you want to avoid getting killed. The stealth, on the other hand, the game's stealth is not good. In Arkham Asylum, you have to isolate enemies and pick them off one by one, be a patient and methodical predator. Or I hear a lot of people just plant an explosive gel on an unconscious guy and then take out the guys that swarm his body. In The Amazing Spider-Man, you crawl on the ceiling, where you will never ever be seen or detected, and you can instantly take down any enemy that you crawl over. Enemies disappear after you've taken them down, and enemies have 0 peripheral vision, so 9 times out of 10 you don't need to worry about being seen. What's frustrating is that enemies that require stealth look almost identical to enemies that you can take in basic combat. There are several times when I subdued a group of enemies with stealth when I think I was supposed to take them in a fist fight, and a few times when I died because I tried to fist fight a stealth enemy. That is inexcusably lousy design. And the stealth sections have glitches too. In one of the sewer levels, of which there are 3, I died because one of the enemies in the stealth section spotted me and shot me dead, and when I respawned at a checkpoint, the enemies had wandered off. And this happened more than once. What the hell kind of chaos theory or quantum physics does this game operate on? Is the game bugged out the butt on purpose because this is a Spider-Man game? And yeah, I know that spiders are arachnids and not bugs, but screw you, I liked that joke! One of the upgrades that you can unlock with XP is the ability to superglue enemies to the ceiling as you perform a stealth takedown, which almost guarantees that enemies will never detect you. What's curious is that, with one exception, that stealth power-up is the only useful upgrade in the entire game! There are upgrades that give you extra web rush powers that you will never use. There are suit upgrades that allegedly increase your health, but I noticed no difference after I bought them. The only other power-up in the game that is useful is the one that lets you web strike sentry guns, which I think the game requires you to have because sentry guns kill you in seconds. Compare that to Arkham Asylum, where deciding which power-up you want to get when you level up is an important decision, and there are only 3 or 4 upgrades that aren't vital to the game. That pattern is swapped for The Amazing Spider-Man. There are 3 upgrades that you need, and the rest don't help you for shit. And something that reduces the game's difficulty is the game's regenerating health. See, if you're getting your ass kicked in a fight, all you have to do is zip around the room until you find a spot the enemies can't reach, which is not very hard to do, and wait a little while for your health to regenerate. You also regenerate health while web swinging, which means that you can swing around chanting "neener, neener, neener" out of enemies' reach until your health comes back. What I really hate, though, is that as you take damage, the edges of the screen fill up with gigantic, opaque red splotches until they take up most of the screen. This is a trend in video games that needs to crawl up its own ass and die. The last thing that I need when I'm getting killed is for half the screen to be covered in shit so that I can't see what I'm doing. What was wrong with health bars? Arkham Asylum had health bars, you couldn't rip that off too? There's also an ability that instantly web zips you to a random spot in the room to get away from enemies, which is really pointless since you have the ability to stop time and zip wherever you want anyway. The only central gameplay mechanic that isn't stolen from Arkham Asylum is the web rush mode. Holding the Z button lets you freeze time for a few seconds and use the Wii Remote's pointer to instantly web zip wherever you're pointing, and you're going to use this mode every few seconds. You use web rush to zip around rooms, you use it to perform stealth takedowns, you use it to web strike enemies, the key to killing every single boss is using web rush at the correct time, and you use it to interact with vital objects like valves and generators. You can also use web rush to fling objects at enemies, but you won't because Spider-Man doesn't actually aim these items when he throws them. Web Rush is a fun and unique mechanic, even though it only works when it feels like it. Several times the game just wouldn't let me web zip to a wall or a ceiling, or it wouldn't unless I was aiming at one spot, and often when you need to operate a machine with the web rush, the game doesn't let you do it unless you're standing in one specific spot. So you have to wander around a room triggering web rush over and over and over again until the game decides to work properly, and yes, it is freaking annoying when that happens. If you're one of the people who doesn't like Spider-Man's costume in the new movie, then you can unlock the classic and the black suit to use in the game. But I swear that somebody at Activision is screwing with me because the classic and black suits that you can unlock are the red and black suits from Spider-Man 3! You know, that other Spider-Man game that I took a well-deserved crap on a long time ago. Why would they do that? Why would they issue the classic and iconic design of the black suit for the design that appeared in the movie? My only explanation is that I'm being trolled by somebody at Activision. I don't know if that's awesome or sad. Now, even though I've spent the last, 17 minutes bitching about this game, The Amazing Spider-Man isn't bad. Its combat is stimulating and requires actual skill. The stealth is easy, but it keeps the game from becoming monotonous. The web rush mode is a genuinely interesting gameplay mechanic and a neat way to navigate levels, and the story, though flawed, is compelling enough to make you want to play the game all the way through. Although as you get to the end of the game, the story kind of starts to fall apart. The central theme of the game's story is the moral conflict between Spider-Man and Smythe. Spider-Man wants to help Connors make an antidote that will cure the cross-species, while Smythe wants to just kill the cross-species before they kill innocent people. But here's the thing. A little over halfway through the game, Connors develops a working antidote that cures the infected. Spider-Man tests it on Gwen and some scientists, and it works. If they have a working antidote, there is officially no reason for Smythe to keep trying to mass murder the infected civilians other than just the fact that he's an evil bastard. This central moral conflict just falls on its face because there's absolutely no question that Smythe is in the wrong here. So considering that Smythe's plan A for getting rid of the cross-species is to send a massive snake robot that's specifically designed to cause billions of dollars of collateral damage to go through the city blowing shit up, you figure the guy has to have some kind of evil mastermind plan, right? That's the major weak point of the game's story. The game never really comes up with a reason for why Smythe is so batshit insane and why he's dead set on killing millions of innocent people with his robots. I figured that Smythe has a god complex and he had a complete mental breakdown when his supposedly perfect robot started being defeated by Spider-Man. It made sense, he has all the symptoms, but the game itself never explains Smythe's behavior other than saying at the end of the game he sees the world in black and white instead of shades of gray. I'm sorry, that's really not a good enough explanation for me for why he thinks that building a cyber dragon from Yu-Gi-Oh! To mass murder people is a good idea. And if you check Wikipedia, its plot synopsis says that Connor's prototype antidote made Smythe go crazy. The game's story is a mess. The villain has no motivation. There is no good reason for the bad guy to be a bad guy. The villain's sole motivation for being evil is that he's crazy, and the game doesn't even pin down a reason why he's crazy. The game doesn't even end with a fight against Smythe. The final boss is the Lizard, because at the end of the day, this is a movie licensed game. And even when it's not copying the movie, it's required by law to copy the movie. Okay, The Amazing Spider-Man doesn't have any game-breaking problems, it's just not polished. The combat and stealth all works, they just don't work the way they're supposed to. The overall story is compelling. I think they just got the main story laid out and started adding details and didn't have time to make sure all the details made sense. It's another movie license game that got pushed out the door before it was ready, but at least the game was finished, mostly, when it was pushed out. I can recommend the game, but get the non-Wii version of the game if you can. Don't let Activision screw you the way they screwed me. And as for you assheads, I'm watching you. I'm watching you closely.